Hey guys, Mathel here once again, and I wanted to talk about the upcoming Scion Ascendant changes. Before I do that, yes, I did dye my hair, just getting that out of the way so that you don't have to prod and poke me on Twitch asking what happened or what I've done. I got some sort of pale blonde highlights throughout most of it, and that's what it looks like. But the point of the video is Scion Ascendant changes. Now, these are going to be coming with 3.0, but first of all in the 3.0 beta, and it's been a long time since anything's happened to Scion. The last real change was just a slight nerf to a few of the ascendancies, like the Berserker one, which then more or less killed Scion viability and drastically reduced the amount of Scions we see running around, since there was basically no point to ever make a Scion with the previous unbuffed versions of all the ascendancies, except for maybe Essence Drain. So I want to make a quick video going over these changes from last week, just the important ones and what this does to Scion and its viability. And someone managed to put up a list of changes on a Reddit thread, which you may have already seen because it's fairly old, and I'll link that in the YouTube comments if you need it. But it just goes over the comparisons of old and new stuff with the Scion. But I wasn't going to go over each individual change, just mostly wanted to highlight the ones that look pretty good now and potentially what I might be able to use them for, because there are quite a few interesting ones now, and I definitely think you can make some viable Scions at this point, which is exciting stuff. The current Scion concept is sort of a fun one, but it's just a little bit clunky because some of them aren't really worth taking at the moment, and ultimately some of the relocations and starting points don't really do too much for most builds, and especially leveling through the character with labs, you feel terrible because you don't really get anything for a lot of your lab clears except for just a couple of points. So like I said, currently the only real reason to do a Scion is a Essence Drain character, and that's because the Occultist node here is pretty good and gets most of the really nice stuff you want from Occultist for Essence Drain, and then it synergizes nicely with a Deadeye for additional projectiles and Pierce. However, at this stage, all of the Witch ones look pretty damn good. The Necro one got buffed to have skill duration, and Elementalist over here got really buffed to be rather impressive indeed. It now has the 50% reduced reflected elemental damage taken node, you now always penetrate 6% enemy resists, and you get the old elemental conflux that was really quite nice before it got kind of nerfed or changed in the Elementalist ascendancy. So elemental conflux will give you Ignite, Chill, and Shock for all of your attacks for 6 seconds when you kill a rare or unique enemy. When you're doing a lot of fast clear speed that a lot of builds do these days, that is going to be up 100% of the time, and that makes for insane clear speed. You can also have an additional golem, which is a pretty nice perk too. Combo this for any sort of good clear speed character with another random ascendancy like an assassin at the moment or a raider, and you have a pretty good clear speed monster because the Elementalist has almost no waste over here. It is a very nice upgrade to the old one and really takes a lot of the really nice stuff from Elementalist. And if Reflect is still a big deal in 3.0, then this one should definitely see quite a lot of use as a one half of the Scion. Occultist I don't think really changed, and Necro gained a few little things, which does make it a bit more appealing, but overall not too interesting to me. For the Shadow, Saboteur is still absolutely terrible, and you can read that. There's quite a lot of uproar about how bad that is. Trickster ain't too bad, but Assassin over here is really quite tempting now. You get a flat 1.5 crit, which is absolutely nothing to sneeze at if you have a base 5 crit spell, for example. 40 crit multi against full life, nothing too substantial, but you get easy power charge sustain with your clear speed when running maps. So that's going to combo quite nicely with a lot of other things like Elementalist or Raider and even Slayer, for example, and you're going to be able to get power charges all the time and some quite nice crit all of the time as well, which isn't power charge reliant. So Assassin got a nice little buff and definitely should see quite some use as well. I could imagine this one comboing with, like I said, Elementalist, or quite a lot of Spellcaster builds, because, like I said, when you have 5 crit and you up it by another 1.5, that's pretty substantial, and getting power charges easily is quite nice for even things like a Wander, a Spectral Throw character. It's a pretty strong ascendancy now, I feel. Next up, Raider did get a bit of a buff, and the main take-home here is 10% chance to gain a Frenzy Charge when you hit a rare or unique enemy. So that's going to be Frenzy Charge sustained for most builds, because a lot of them hit quite frequently, and that's going to give you at least 3 Frenzy Charges, which is 12% more damage, and a lot of Spellcaster builds, or CI builds, and whatnot, currently don't have Frenzy Charges at all. 12% more damage, 12% attack speed, and potentially another Frenzy Charge if you spec into it, or get it from the Merciless Bandits, is a pretty big deal. And at the same time, you also have Onslaught while on full Frenzy Charges, which should be always, and then a bit more movement speed. So that's a really nice buff, and definitely something that I think should see use in clear speed builds and Spellcaster builds, I do feel. Now, Pathfinder gained a bit of a buff too, some movement speed and 50% chance to gain a flask charge when you deal a crit. So it's got a pretty good Surgeon's mod here. I've never been a big fan of those, but people do make those work for infinite flasks, and that's basically a stronger version than the current Pathfinder one. So it should be pretty interesting for some people to be taking this thing. Now, Deadeye got a slight buff, but it was already okay, and it didn't really change too much, or the viability of it anyway. Next up, we have the Duelist, which did get a huge buff in the Slayer category. So you now have the 50% reduced Reflect node here. So like I said, if Reflect is going to be a big deal still, then this will see quite a lot of use. On top of that, Life Leech effects are not removed at full life. That's a very strong portion of the Slayer as well, and means you might not need Valpact, and it really is quite nice. So if you are going to be building a physical character, a Scion is a pretty good choice, especially if you're building a crit physical character, because when you make a crit physical sort of, or a crit attack based build, chances are you want to go to the Shadow, and it's always kind of clunky traveling, especially if you are something like a Berserker to start with, or, on the Marauder side of the tree, I mean. Instead, you can start as a Scion and grab the good shit over here, and then just start over at Shadow with the Scion Ascendancy shit, or even start as Duelist. But mainly, I do mean you're going to be starting something like here, grabbing this, going down to Duelist, grabbing the Slayer, and then probably Assassin, and starting over here, skipping a whole bunch of bullshit waste over here, and it becomes pretty efficient, so you can do some nifty jumping around with the Scion tree when comboing with Slayer and Assassin, I do feel. Gladiator, I feel overall got a bit of a nerf because they reduced the spell block portion of it, and it's not too tempting anyway. And Champion, I think, got a slight buff, but, I guess it's kind of defensive. It's not something I'm probably going to be ever using, because Fortify on melee hit seems useless to me. You can almost always get it on your travel skill for free. It just means you have to do it a bit yourself. Otherwise, bit of damage, I guess, so it's not too bad there. Then we come to the Marauder side of things. Chieftain was completely unchanged, and to me still isn't very exciting. Juggernaut gained a bit of chance to gain endurance charge on when you're hit, which might be kind of clunky and not reliable, so it's still not very nice, I do think. Berserker got a slight buff in that you now have the whole Savage Hit thing, in that they added 20% increased movement speed when you get the Savage Hit. It reduced the attack and cast speed a bit. Overall, Berserker, it's still not bad, but the problem is 1% of damage leached as life when you've killed recently is still pretty bad, because you want leech all of the time. Leech is an important part of your character's defense. You don't want it only when you've killed recently, because during boss fights that just won't come up some of the time. Otherwise, 10% more damage is very nice. It's just the whole leech thing that kind of kills Berserker for me and for everyone else, so I'm not sure it's going to see much more use regardless. And then lastly, a few things changed at the Templar side of things. Now, Inquisitor got a bit of a makeover, but it still doesn't have the really tempting parts of the Inquisitor, like the full elemental penetration, and ultimately I think it's still going to be weaker than most ascendancies for you to take, so still not very good. I don't think you'll be taking that very often. The Guardian got somewhat of a rework, but it still doesn't really appeal to me too much, but it does look a lot more usable now. It's just not really my area of expertise to comment too much on stuff like that, so I'll leave that to you guys. And Hierophant didn't really get much of a change, just gained more chance to get a power charge when you place a totem. It still is a decent enough ascendancy perk overall for the additional totem when you put things in your helm, and people have made plenty of uses of that, and I'm sure people probably will still make plenty of uses of this one, but it's not terribly exciting for me still. So overall, I do think Raider, Slayer, maybe Pathfinder, Assassin, and Elementalist are all going to see quite a lot of use, and I'll probably make a few builds around those, more for the fact that you get those little perks and you can combo them nicely, but it's more for just being able to start in a different part of the tree and have a few extra passive points, because you do get in total I think 4 free passive points as a Scion, which is pretty damn nice, but then you get to start somewhere else on a passive tree, ultimately saving you quite a few points. So in the end, a Scion could potentially have, you know, 6 to 10 extra points saved compared to another character, as well as those perks, and in the long run that definitely should be usable, though it is a bit of a shame that some of these ascendancies are still fairly trash and not going to see any use. Looking at you, Saboteur, but there were some good changes, and I think it's a good starting point. So it is still just going to be released in the beta. Who knows, maybe there'll be more buffs coming. That's about all I've got for that, guys. I hope you're looking forward to Scion changes and beta and 3.0 in general. It's going to be huge. Hope to see you there. Thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.